You're listening to Boobies and Newbies, brought to you by the Frolic Podcast Network. Welcome to Boobies and Newbies, the podcast that asks novice romance readers to think outside the dick in a box and brave the unbridled world of erotica. I'm your host, Kelly Reynolds, and today we are kicking off the month of May with our first Yummy Love review. Y'all know that I will look for just about any excuse to discuss food on this podcast, so it only seemed appropriate to dedicate an entire month of reading towards baked goods and lattes and pizza. Oh my. And who better to discuss tasty treats with than professional food photographer and food stylist, Ashley Arpel Greenwald. You can follow all of Ashley's adventures in Foodie Land under her handle, That's Ashley's Kitchen. But first, let's talk about food and romance. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you so much for having me. That was such a great intro. I'd love for you to follow me around everywhere I go.
This has become like a running joke on this podcast that I should start a career in being a professional hype woman. Yeah, I really think maybe this is a calling in life that I just hadn't considered before.
I mean, it's certainly not a bad route to go down, you know? I mean, we need people like you.
Oh, good. Yeah. No, just one more creative outlet, because there's always room for more, right? But anyway, well, I'm so excited to talk to you because I have to say, I mean, obviously, this month is all about food in romance, and to have the opportunity to talk to somebody who is a professional food photographer and food stylist is basically a dream come true for me.
Really? Oh my goodness. Well, that makes me so happy. No one's ever uttered those words. Talking to a professional food photographer and stylist is a dream come true.
I don't know why not, because that's one of the things I feel like anytime I read a magazine and I see advertisements or, you watch the commercial and wonder, how did Burger King make that burger look so appetizing? I'm just like, this is somebody's job. This is somebody's job, and they are doing it well.
And it's all fake food. I mean, maybe the bread might be real, but it's all shellacked. And, there's an ongoing, I think I saw in someone's video that they're releasing our secrets, but we use smoke machines and shaving cream instead of whipped cream. And we use, very thick oil instead of maple syrup. I mean, we have so many tips and tricks that we didn't realize were being given to the world.
That's amazing. Okay, so what's those were a few great examples, by the way. I think especially the shaving cream instead of whipped cream is the one that's got my stomach rolling. But I'd love to know what's one of the weirdest or most memorable wacky designs or styles that you've had to deal with before?
I would say the oddest one that I've dealt with, and I can send you the photo after this, but I was photographing an ice cream sundae, and ice cream, obviously we all know ice cream melts, but it melts especially under heated lights very quickly. And instead of ice cream, I used almost frozen cream cheese. And some people, and there's always someone, if you're photographing, either on a set or sometimes you happen to be photographing for a client with just the client, if they're a blogger. And but if you're on set, there's always that one person, that one PA that doesn't know yet that you're really not supposed to eat the props. And someone, took a scoop when we were all done. I mean, it was the end of the day. So also it had been sitting out in and out of the refrigerator for I want to say like 6 or 7 hours because we were placing it, it was Marie Antoinette themed in one space, and then it was just plain white background in another. Then we had a pink background. There were so many different themes, and one PA like was pretty much eyeing it the whole day. Took a big scoop, didn't know. Okay, he was like, "Oh, I guess this is just up for grabs." Had no idea. Took a bite and was utterly disgusted. I mean,
duh.
The guttural sound that this human made, I've never, ever heard since, and I never heard it before.
I mean, and you said it was like cream cheese. That's not like so outrageous. But I guess if like you're expecting ice cream and what you get is like almost frozen cream cheese, like that would definitely, it'd be more of like the shock factor that would set me off.
Remember, I also told you with the whipped cream, we use shaving cream.
Oh, yeah.
So there was shaving cream, and there were sprinkles, but they were not real sprinkles. You can buy like fake food sprinkles on Etsy. They have them, but they have them, and you can even find them in craft stores as well. I think even Michael's has them. But
oh man,
the sprinkles weren't real. They were fake rainbow sprinkles. The cherries were real because maraschino cherries just hold their sheen. The cherries were real. And I think that the chocolate drizzle was real, but it was ours, and it was touched by, 17 people at this time.
That PA learned that they should eat before coming to set, obviously, because here's my thing is I feel like if I worked in food, and I used to be a waitress, so I know that this is true about myself, I would just want to eat like all the time. I would just want to eat it all. And every time I watch a baking show or a cooking show, one of the first things I always wonder about is like, well, does the crew get to eat the leftovers?
I hope not, because especially with those baking shows, I've been approached to do a couple of those competition baking shows specifically that deal with cupcakes. But I, back when I owned an online bakery, I was approached, and I didn't want to do that. I think my anxiety would have gone the best of me, but I have to imagine that the crew really shouldn't be eating all of the leftover cake and whatnot, because it's out again for like, I think their shooting days, it's like 10 hours. I mean, they're baking and then they're standing there under the lights. Like, I would not, even sometimes at like big parties where the food has been out for a couple of hours, pre-COVID, I wouldn't have gone in and like taken some food, even if it was like a chip, if it had been sitting out for like 5 hours,
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Honestly, I remember that one of the last days I worked on a set before COVID set in, it was just on the set of like a pilot one of my friends was shooting, and they had ordered this big, catered lunch of like little sandwiches and stuff for everybody. And I made the mistake of like grazing at that station like several hours later, and of course was like severely sick that night because I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't have eaten a sandwich that was sitting outside for 5 hours, but I was hungry.
And I totally get that. My problem with craft services is that it sometimes, not always, like in your instance, they did not replenish. But when the last time pre-COVID, I was on a big set and they replenished the craft services. Like every time someone came up and took something, they would instantly have its replacement or something new. And
Lord,
I kept going back. So I was like, it's always going to be here. So I'm always going to be fat. And I just ate. And I waddled out of there by the end of the day because I was like, well, I mean, look, you're putting it in front of me and like, I'm not currently like needed on set. Like I'm going to sit and eat,
I know. It's so crazy. Well, okay. I'm so excited to hear you talk about today's book because of your background. And before we get into it, I do want to know just sort of like what got you interested in food in general? Because I know you mentioned you had an online bakery service, you photograph food and style food. So what's, where does this all come from?
That's a great question. And it's a question that I've been asked many times. And I feel like each time I answer it, it's somewhat different because truthfully, I have been obsessed with food ever since I can remember. I've always loved eating it. And then,
same girl.
I have collected, and to this day I still collect. But when I was a child, I used to collect fake food, like toy food.
Oh.
And, like, how you would have play kitchens and as a child, and I would collect all that and I would carry it around with me in my bag. Even as to and from school. I mean, and where was I going where I would need just like a fake thing of
you had to
of
be
those.
prepared, got to have that bag of plastic food, like just in case.
Just in case. And so it even followed me to this day, but the food gets a bit more intricate. When I was younger, it was like, I think the brand, and I know this because I still look it up, I think the brand was Melissa and Doug. And they it's a child toy company, and they have fake food, but not just fake food. I think they have a plethora of different genres and of toys. And they had like this fake glass of milk that I would carry around. And so that it was very basic when I was younger. And then now I have fake key lime pies. I have fake Pop-Tarts.
Oh my gosh.
Candles that are scented and shaped like an actual bowl of Fruit Loops.
So, I love that.
It's amazing. And when I first got it, I would like tease people. I would prank people. My friends would come over and I'd be like, oh shoot, you know what? I left a bowl of cereal upstairs. Can you go grab that for me? And they'd come down and they'd be in horror. They'd be like, I think you left it out a little too long. They thought it was real.
And that it just solidified overnight.
Yep. But I would say that it didn't become professional until a little over 6 years ago. Getting a little deep, I was going through my very first real breakup. My ex-boyfriend broke up with me, I think 5 days before Valentine's Day. And,
oh my gosh. Wow. Way to tie it into this book again.
Right? I know. I feel like this book, it's like Kismet, but
yeah.
And I needed a creative outlet. So I started baking just for fun. And I had a bunch of girlfriends come over one night and I made a feast. I'm talking like there were muffins in the corner. There was pie on the table. Specifically, I remember it was buttermilk pie, and it was it was amazing. I loved it. But there was just a feast, and they said, you should try selling this. And I laughed. I said, that's ridiculous. What do you want me to do? Just literally tell people to pay me for this? And they said, well, yeah, that's what we're saying.
That's what starting a business means, actually.
Yeah, I know, right? I was flabbergasted, but I went through the proper portals. I got my cottage food kitchen to be able to sell online and in farmers markets, and so then I just I submitted for a farmers market, and then I just from there developed an online bakery titled That's Ashley's Kitchen. That's where it originated. That's Ashley's Kitchen.
Aww.
And then I did that for about, I want to say a little over 4 years. I did that, and it was great. I loved it, but ultimately, and I actually ended it about a year before COVID. I'm glad that I did, but I turned the bakery into a boutique media company specializing in food and product photography and videography, because I was so much more happy plating and photographing and uploading to the website for people to purchase than I was creating and selling.
Yeah, well, because it's a lot of work. Like, I mean, you're asking, what you've described are like two different jobs, but I feel like to also be the baker in that situation, to get the recognition and attention and the clients and everything, you're also baking and photographing and putting it out online and on social media and everything. But now you've kind of cut that part out of the equation. So really, you're saving yourself some work and concentrating on one specific area, but it's still a great way to stay involved in food, which obviously you love.
Oh, I love. And sometimes companies will reach out asking me to write a recipe and photograph the recipe, but now I know how to properly charge for something like that.
That's cool. I like that. Oh, God, I just love food. I mean, it's again, I love food so much, but I know that if I did any sort of work in food, I would just want to eat all the time. Although, if I was surrounded by like shaving cream instead of whipped cream, I guess that would solve that problem.
Yeah, it just might. Oh, also, another thing, I have fake ice. Not as a collector, not like I don't collect the fake ice. I actually use that for photographs.
Oh,
because ice melts so quickly and you can't get it, it's so malleable, it's water. So the fake ice, it's plastic and it looks real. And I use that when I photograph juices or things like that.
Wow. Okay, so Ashley's spilling all the food secrets here, all those food styling secrets that everybody's always wondered about. I know my mom's a 6th grade teacher, and one of her ex-students went on to do some food photography, and I know that she was telling us one time about photographing a hamburger and how the amount it was insane. Like my mouth was wide open when I heard about this, because she was talking about like how they would stick like a bunch of like toothpicks inside to like make the layers taller and seem larger. And then also they would like individually place like the sesame seeds on a bun and like everything was shellacked. I was just like, well, no wonder, because I never get a shiny hamburger when I order burgers, and I'm very disappointed. Right.
The only shine that you get when you get a hamburger is usually just the oil spilling, and it's all on the bottom, which I'm not complaining about, because I love that about burgers.
Yes.
But it's never as thick as what you see in the commercials.
No. So, in fact, I feel like the last time I like drove through a McDonald's or something and got a hamburger there, I was like, wait a second, did they get smaller? Like, what's the deal?
You know what? I wouldn't want to eat a very thick cheeseburger or hamburger, because if they're too big, like the ones that we photograph, if they look so large, and it's like not proportionate to my mouth.
Yes, exactly. I have actually been to a couple restaurants where they have like, their trademark burger, and it's got like bacon and onion rings, and there's like a whole sandwich in here and a donut and all that. I'm just like, oh my God. But like, I have a huge mouth, but it's not that big. Like, how am I supposed to put this in my mouth?
Yeah, my eyes are definitely bigger than my mouth and my stomach.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'd love to know where everybody can find and follow you, because obviously they're going to want to check out all your behind the scenes stuff when it comes to the food land.
Of course. Yeah. Well, like you said earlier, my handle on Instagram, TikTok is That's Ashley's Kitchen, as well as Facebook. It's all That's Ashley's Kitchen. And my website is that'sashleys.kitchen.com.
Oh, I love it. You're on the Talk as well.
So you know what? I just very recently joined TikTok. I don't understand it. And I hate being that person that I hope I'm not like aging myself in any way, but
I'm with you.
I just don't get it. I'm trying. I don't understand the algorithm.
Yeah.
I don't understand just the basics, but
no, I don't either. I'm with you. And you know what? I have mad respect for anybody that's doing it. I know that there's been a lot of authors who have started promoting their work on TikTok. There's a lot of book bloggers who are over there now giving their reviews, and I love it. And I keep telling myself like, oh, maybe this is the next step. But at the same time, it's just one more platform, and there's so many out there already that I'm already tired.
I agree. It's just, it's a little much.
It's, like any social media platform, it seems like it's one of those things where if you're at the tip top to start with, you're just going to continue along your merry little way. I think it's harder for people getting started who don't already have like a massive following. I mean, most of the people who are like the top trending artists on TikTok are people who were already huge on like Vine, Instagram, YouTube. So I don't know. I mean, I feel the same way about podcasting too.
I totally agree with you. It's like every reality TV star out there is now developing their own podcast.
Yep.
So I definitely see that. But I mean, first of all, the name is awesome.
Thank you.
Okay. And just like the premise too. I mean, boobies and newbies, come on.
I know. Well, anytime you can use the word boobies, I feel like, and by the way, I feel like ever since I started the podcast, I use the word boobies a lot more and I hear people saying it a lot more. I'm like, okay, I know it's not real, but like, I like to think that I had something to do with that.
Yeah. It's all you. It's like that one time I went away to camp. I went to camp one year, like literally I was 9, and I think we did a musical, like Peter Pan or something. And I come back and they're playing Peter Pan on the Disney Channel. And I was like, that's because of me. You know, they knew that I was in the show at camp.
Yeah.
And
I will say some things work out like crazy serendipitous, or, you know, you use the word kismet. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I've had guests on the show where, you know, we'll all have picked a book simply because it was, you know, the book I wanted to talk about, or, you know, it went along with the theme for the month. And while we discuss it, they'll be like, Kelly, did you pick this because you know that I grew up in the same town as the main character and I have the same job as her friend and we are the same age and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, no, I don't know all these details about your life. I literally am picking a book and going with it. So the fact that happens a lot on this podcast, I wish I could take credit for that. I really do. But I think it's just the universe throwing me a frickin' bone every once in a while.
Well, it's funny because I genuinely thought that like this was so specific to me, you know, like just everything about it. She moves to the big city slightly moves, you know, she has a 2-week minimum or maximum. And she wants to make it big, meets a baker, you know, and I'm from New York and I'm a baker. It's just, I thought it was so perfectly curated. And then, and to hear that it totally wasn't is so funny to me.
Here's my thought process. The Sweetest Fix. Oh, this is cute. It's about baking. Okay. Ashley. Oh, Ashley takes pictures of food. Food. Done. There we go.
That could be like the best intro ever.
Yeah, there you go. Here's a book about food, and I'm talking to my guest who knows something about food. Done. There you go. So, yeah, that's basically, just in case any of our patrons were wondering where my thought process comes from when selecting these books. I do put some thought into it, but definitely I think have a helping hand from the universe, and I will take it.
Sometimes the universe really gives you a high five. You know what I mean?
Oh, and I need it. We all need it. We all need that high five once in a while. So high five to you and high fives to all of our listeners.
Yes, high fives for everyone.
Okay, Ashley. Well, I think it is time for us to talk about today's book, The Sweetest Fix by Tessa Bailey. And this contemporary romance was published in January of this year, 2021. It's available on Amazon for free if you have Kindle Unlimited. So definitely worth a free download. And I have to say, you know, and Ashley, I do want to know about your experience with reading romance or lack thereof, but I am a longtime fan of Tessa Bailey's work, and I surprised even myself when I realized that I hadn't actually reviewed one of her books yet for the podcast. So this worked out perfectly in that I get to highlight an author whose books that I like, but also that, you know, this is the perfect book when discussing yummy love, because we have got plenty of yummy goodness in this book. So I do want to say, you know, and ask you, Ashley, what was your experience with romance before reading this book?
Well, it's funny because before reading this book, one, I would like you to send me a list of Tessa Bailey's other work that you
will
love.
do.
I really enjoyed reading this book. And really my experience reading romance before The Sweetest Fix was, honestly, I read half or maybe 3/4 of 50 Shades of Grey years ago. I mean, like 7 or 8 years ago. And other than that, none really. I remember in college, it was a prop from like the 70s. It was a romance novel. And like while I was waiting for my cue, because the prop was there, I was reading it and I liked it. But then, you know.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And I'm sure you can't remember what the book was, but I want to know what it was so badly.
I couldn't even tell you that one, but I remember reading 50 Shades of Grey. It was so funny reading that. It was recommended to me by my grandmother.
Oh my God,
She
Grandma!
sent me the book. She actually sent it to me, and
that's a good grandma.
You know, props to Grandma. But that was a tough read, only because I was so very single at that point. Like I think I was like 22 maybe, and maybe 21. And like this was before my 23-year-old big breakup. But yeah, it was a hard book to read single, you know?
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Well, and it's a far cry from The Sweetest Fix. And also from what I'm sure, whatever that book was that you gave a glance to from like the 70s or 80s. Like it's a very different book and series from what we would consider to be more traditional romance. So, no shade, ha ha ha. But it is a series though that garnered a lot of attention towards the romance community. So for that, I will always be grateful.
I can't wait for my next romance book. I'm very excited. I have to admit there were a couple times where I would skip ahead to like see when like the juicy stuff was going to happen.
Okay.
But then I would always come back because I needed to know the in between.
That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Well, and it's funny because, some people, they want to get just to the juicy bits. Some people are absolutely fine skipping over the juicy bits. So, I mean, everybody has their own interests when it comes to reading romance, whether they're in it more for the characters or like the dirty hot sex or the happy ending. We all have our own goals, and it's absolutely fine. There's no wrong way to read a romance so long as you read it with an open mind.
Right. And I feel like I appreciate that. I feel like if you read this book without the steamy sex scenes, it's kind of like watching or reading a rom-com.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I wanted the steamy sex scenes. I love rom-coms though, but I really, this was like a nice outlet. I liked it.
Yeah. Well, and I don't see why rom-coms can't be steamy too. I think actually author Rosie Danon, she wrote The Intimacy Experiment, which just came out. We reviewed it for one of our April reads, and I think I heard her, and I can't say she coined the term, but she was the one who I first heard use it. And she said, well, my books aren't rom-coms, they're raunch-coms.
Ooh.
And I was like, ooh, I like that. I like the idea of this. I guess because everybody feels like we have to put a label on every single piece of literature or film or TV. So if people feel the need to step outside of the rom-com and label a steamier version of it as a raunch-com, I'm here for it. I don't think it's necessary, but I do love the term.
I love it. I really like it, actually. I would like to read her books now.
Yes, we will talk more about that because they are wonderful. So I think if you liked this book, you would absolutely like Rosie's book. So that would be that you can add it to your list of romances to read after our podcast together.
Oh, I love it. I can't wait. And what a great list title, Romances to Read.
Yes, of course. So, okay, well, let me give everybody the brief synopsis for this book, and then we can dive into our review. I'm excited about this one because, like you said, I think there's a lot that you connected with in this book, you know, professionally, personally. And I know as a former theater kid myself, we all dream of seeing our name in lights on Broadway at one point. So I absolutely adored that in our heroine, and our hero is a sexy plus-size baker, so what's not to love?
You know, it's funny because they refer to him. I'll let you go on with it, but then I want to get back to the way they talk about his size.
Yeah, I do too. Okay, so here is a synopsis for The Sweetest Fix by Tessa Bailey. Reese dreams of seeing her name in lights on Broadway, but so far she has only graced the used car parking lots of rural Wisconsin. Well, and I have to stop there just for a second because I'm currently living in Minnesota, and I've absolutely driven through rural Wisconsin on more than one occasion. So I had a very clear image in my mind of the kinds of places that Reese has been performing.
Poor thing. Poor little thing.
Oh, we all got to start somewhere. With her window of opportunity shrinking fast, a miracle happens. She wins an audition with Bernard Bexley, Broadway's most respected dance choreographer. When disaster strikes and Reese misses the audition, she has to find another way in front of Bernard, otherwise face the disappointment back home. Following the sage advice of a Times Square Pikachu, of course, Reese seeks out Bernard's son, prepared to beg for his aid, never expecting mega sparks to fly between her and the gentle giant baker. With Reese's heart now involved, she refuses to use Leo to her advantage and tries to walk away before her ulterior motives are exposed. But gravity continues to draw them back together until it's impossible to stay apart. But Reese's, oh my God, I feel like there's like 8 sentences, like, but this happens.
I know,
but Reese's lie of omission can only stay buried for so long. Duh. When Leo finds out how their relationship started, will Reese keep her ultimate role as Leo's leading lady? Or will the curtain fall on their real life fairy tale? Ooh, I admire all of the theater references smashed in there at the end. I'm always here for a good theater reference. So, okay, well, I would love to turn it over to you and ask for initial impressions, or if you want to start specifically with Leo, we can go back to that as well.
Well, overall, I really enjoyed it. It was an easy read in the sense that, like, yes, I was never once pushing myself outside of the deadline of this show. I was never pushing myself to get through it because it was always entertaining. I was always rooting for Leo and for everyone. I mean, yeah. Reese is like the titular character, but Leo, how could you not root for him? But I mean, going into Leo, we can start right off if you want.
Oh no, go for it. I'm with you too. In that I did overall really enjoy this book. And I will say I was much more drawn to Leo than I was to Reese.
Yeah. You know, they're polar opposites. You know, Reese is very optimistic, yet very real. What was funny about Reese to me, and I actually kind of understand it a bit, is that, you know, in the world of auditioning, you are at the whim of someone else. You are at the will of someone else. So she is so timid and shy and I don't want to say not strong because she's very strong, but, you know, going to an audition, you just get so beaten up. Even if you make it 50% of the way and then you're cut after like that second round, you're still beaten up. But then she was so forceful and so, but in a good way, and so strong when she was in bed with Leo. You know, she knew exactly what she wanted and she asked for it.
Yeah, she was a go-getter. She was a go-getter in like all facets of life. And impressed, especially when you consider the fact that I want to say she's only supposed to be 21 or 22.
They didn't release that until like, I want to say like a fourth of the way into the book. So like, I thought that we were dealing with two like 28-year-olds because I think they say that Leo's 28.
Yes.
So first of all, good on him. You know, he owned his own bakery on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Great for him.
And he did it without the help of his famous father too. Like he's very specific in saying like, I don't accept money from him. Like this is very much something that I wanted to accomplish on my own, and I have.
He did it. Good for him, you know, but I want to talk about how I couldn't get past it. They describe him when we're first introduced to Leo as like heavy. I didn't know. What was your first impression when they introduced him?
So I went into this, first of all, I have to say I was recommended this book by a good friend of the podcast, Ariana. She's been on the podcast several times before. And I had seen the book popping up across social media and knew, Tessa Bailey. And from what I could gather, this was kind of like a surprise release from Tessa Bailey. Like, I don't think there was a lot of promotion. It was just sort of like, surprise, I wrote another book. And people were really excited. So Ariana recommended it to me and she said, you're going to love it. It has a plus size hero who's like a cinnamon roll, you know, gooey on the inside, hard on the outside baker. And she knows that I love a grumpy hero. I love a plus size hero because I don't think they get enough representation in romance, let alone in life. And so I was super excited. While reading, you know what I think it is that I want to see more plus size representation in general. And we are seeing a lot more plus size heroines in romance. It's still very few and far between, but we are seeing it. And now as some writers are writing plus size heroes, I wish it was very explicitly said, like this is a big guy. And when I say big, I mean, he's got, you know, a tummy. He's got, you know, extra rolls to him. And I think what it is like, I felt like it was almost, like she didn't want to come out and say it. And so it's like she used words like, he's a gentle giant. And I'm like,
right,
okay.
But then they would refer to his height. And yes, he's 6'3", but they would refer to him as bulky. Not using the word bulky, but the words that they used, in my mind, the synonym would be bulky. Because when they first introduced him, they refer to him as some form of like a gentle giant or something like that. But then when they continue, like when she first sees his manhood, what does she think? Something like the girth.
She says it's proportionate. Like it's proportionate to like a big guy. It's like a big dick. And he I think is the only one. And I will say this is told in third person. So from both it's never like an I story, but we do see inside their heads. And so I think he's the only one who we ever get some indication of his own point of view of his own body. Like he kind of says like, oh, I love to eat. Like clearly look at me. Like I am an eater. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Right,
so this is giving me
clear.
Like, no, I agree.
Besides that was more confusing than clear, because he would say, clearly I love to eat. Look at me. But every description just made him seem like they used the word, I believe she used the word burly, or like he could build a house or something like that. And that doesn't scream plus size to me. It just screams like you're describing
that's like dude at CrossFit who's like a lumberjack, lumbersexual. Like,
so like, when I was reading and, you know, my inner, you know, the movie playing in my mind as I read, I didn't imagine, only due to the fact that the description didn't follow suit, I didn't imagine anyone plus size.
Yeah, no, I wish
it would have been more clear, because I would have loved to have, read a very clear, other than that, I really loved this book. I think just the clarity of him being a plus size person would have been really great. You know?
Yeah, and it's interesting when we think about, because, you know, a lot of times people will make their like dream casting for like a book, like, oh, this is who I picture in the movie version of this book. And I've always had a tough time doing that, both as a reader and a writer, because I don't typically, I like to imagine the ideal world where we don't cast based off of body type or gender or, you know, race. I know that that's not real. I know that that's a fairy tale land that I'm living in. And so, you know, when I read and write now, I try to be not what I would consider like colorblind, because that's, you know, the whole idea of colorblind casting, but I try to be more color conscious and, you know, not just applying that to race, but also to size and gender and sexuality. And so I kind of read things expecting more of that nowadays. And this was a book where I had a very vague picture of who these people were. Like, I couldn't really picture much about any of them aside from the fact that it felt really whitewashed to me. Like, it did feel like, especially in New York City, that this was like a very white group of people.
You're right. You know, what's funny is that that's very true. They never explicitly, that's the thing, is that they never stated anything. It was just very blank, except for the fact that he was apparently burly and Reese had dirty blonde hair that she constantly wore in a side bun, which I didn't fully understand that. Why? It's not 2004, and you're not even wearing panties, but
you're a Gen Zer. Like, what is this? I mean, does this go along with, like, you know, side parts are out? Are we bringing back side buns to go with
I hope not.
Middle parts? Like, what's the deal?
No, please don't. Please.
Yeah, so I mean, it's one of those things where, and you know what? Maybe if this was somebody else reading this book from a different background, from a different lens, they would have a different point of view. But this is one of those books that, you know, yes, I really did enjoy it, but I'm asking a lot of writers today. I'm asking a lot, and maybe it's really not a lot. It's just a lot from what we typically think about, in that I want them to consciously be putting more characters of diversity into their books, because otherwise I think the go-to typical reaction is to assume that everybody is white, everybody is cisgendered, everybody is straight. And, you know, that's my personal narrative. So that is how I picture most things when I read them, if it's not specified. And, you know, I know that that's not ideal, but I recognize that in myself. And so I guess I just wanted to know a little bit more about each of them. But setting that aside, I really liked the romance that developed between the two characters, because it did feel very real. Like, it's one of those things where it's like you know, their first date is them deciding to, like, take a nap together, and she's going to come over and shower at his apartment. And I'm sure some people are reading it thinking, that's weird as hell. Like, who's going to do that? But I'm like, that sounds like modern dating to me. Like, think about every weird encounter you've had from meeting somebody on a dating app, and then before you know it, you're, you know, taking a shower in their bathroom or shopping at the grocery store with them. Like, we have this weird version of what dating is today. So I actually bought way into it.
I really liked that, actually. I thought it was a really cute idea. And I like that they just didn't end it there, that they brought back the the nap date multiple times throughout the book. I honestly feel like their romance and their budding love seemed very natural. I know it takes place in about 2 weeks, but when I think to meeting my fiance, not that I took a shower at his place within the first 2 weeks. I did not.
No judgment if you did. I mean,
I didn't, but we fell for each other very quickly. So and I think that is very modern, not to say that everybody falls right away. I don't think that at all. But I do think with Tinder, and I don't know what the cool dating app is now because I haven't.
Oh, girl, me neither.
But I do think that people have the potential to fall a lot more lot more quicker than they did in the past, because you're talking. There's so much pointed talking before you're meeting. Whereas like if you met in person nowadays, I mean, I met my fiance in a coffee shop.
Oh my gosh. Look at you with your typical, meet cute.
Meet cute.
I love that.
Right? I really, really like that too.
And they have that in this book too. And I really did. This is, I guess for me, what it was is this was one of those stories that I feel like more often than not, when I read a romance, a lot of people think of them as like wish fulfillment. Like I can place myself into the character's shoes and experience this. I don't normally think like that. When I read a romance, I am more of like picturing, okay, when it comes to, let's say, speaking specifically in terms of like a heterosexual relationship, if there's a woman, I want to be friends with her. And with the dude, I want to find him really sexy and want to fuck him. And so in this one, I actually could place myself into Reese's shoes because I felt like we had so much in common in terms of like personality and, what we like to do. And so I was like, oh, this would be like such an ideal situation. Like you walk into a bakery, you strike up a conversation with the people at the front, and there happens to be this like hot, bulky, whatever you want to call him, baker, that comes out, and there's just like this instant connection. Because I wouldn't call this an insta love story, but it's definitely got that sort of like instant connection, lust at first sight, moment between them. And I feel like that's what we all want. Like, I don't, as much as dating apps are a thing, I don't know if I've ever heard somebody say like, yes, the way I would love to meet my future partner is on a dating app. Like, I think everybody still dreams of that idea of meeting somebody and in person, and it just like clicks. And so this was one of those stories where I was like, oh, this is what I want. Like, this could happen. This could be real. I could have this. Like, I want the bulky baker. I want it to happen to me.
I actually completely agree with you. It's funny, not even with romance books, even just like when I read any kind of book, and it might just be the actor in me that I do try to place myself in a character or in a role in the book, but I always think of it as if it were, and this sounds odd, but like live action. So I don't, like when I'm reading it and I can place myself within a character, I view myself. In this one, because they talked about her dirty blonde hair so often, I was like, well, I have brown hair, but I'm going to do my best here to imagine myself. And I kind of did. I will say though, when it got down to like the sex part, I had a couple notes. I had a couple notes.
Okay. Well, I mean, this seems like the right time for us to get into the sexcerpts in general. So I'd love to hear your sex notes. Let's hear them.
Well, I gotta say, I don't mind a little dirty talk. I really don't. I think it's hot and it's sexy. But I think Leo took it to weird levels at certain points. Like he kept calling her sweetheart throughout, while like he would like, they would say like, and then he lunged into her, and then and how does that feel, sweetheart? And it's like, come on, just like, she made it clear. She moaned. Like, we didn't need his constant like vibrato throughout the whole thing.
He got very vocal in the bedroom. I will say and you know what? It actually, I'm with you. I love the dirty talk. But it definitely surprised me, I will say. But I will say, you know, we do know that so many people who are like more dominant personalities in their everyday lives are sometimes, you know, enjoy giving up some control. They like being a little more submissive in the bedroom. That's not everyone, but there was that scene where I think it's when she does come over to take a nap the first time, and he actually tells her like, okay, go shower, then nap. And she says something like, are you letting me know who's in charge? And he says, no, I'm giving you the option of letting me be in charge for a while. And her response is like, okay, I'll allow it. And I was like, ooh, I like this like power dynamic between the two of them. Like this whole exchange of power in the bedroom, and not that she's like giving herself, you know, like, okay, you're in charge, I'm not, but very much, you know, recognizing like, oh, actually, this would be nice. Like, you know, for you to kind of take the lead here a little bit, like, and me to step back. So that was kind of what kept me going through the sex scenes, because he does get very vocal. He gets very alpha male at times, saying stuff like, you're mine, you're mine.
I mean, that can be sexy all in context, you know, like you're mine, whatever. But there were certain things where like he would say, come here and let me lick it. I did not need him to say that. We knew that's where you were going. We, you know, the depiction, you know, Tessa made it very clear you were kissing her all down her body. We knew you were going there. I didn't need you to tell me that you were going to lick it. I didn't like that. And if a guy had ever said that to me, I would have been like, nope. Bye.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you on that one. I happen to like that.
Well, I mean, to each their own. I mean, I like the act of it.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. And that's the thing, is every one of these episodes, we all have our different, you know, interests. We all have certain words that set us off in both a good and bad way. That's always a fun conversation, is which word or euphemism for genitalia, you know, will set you off.
It's funny because in this one they kept referring to her. They would say like he pressed against her sex, and then for him it was like, and his cock is hard. This has been a complaint I've had for a very long time. I don't think we have enough great words for vagina. Like, I feel like the guys get such visceral words, like dick, cock, member, his spear. Member's my favorite one. I don't know why, but it just is. It just is.
I like when people try to be a little more vague and they're just like, his length. And I'm like, oh, okay. But yeah, for women, it's a lot of like textures. Like, it's like her slick heat or her warm tunnel. And I'm just like, can we give it something a little more human-like? Like, I don't need it to sound like something out of like The Matrix. Like, I just want us to know that this is a vagina.
Right. I mean, and they make it so, I do appreciate the fact that they made it very clear that both of them were getting turned on. You know, they would say that he was getting aroused, but every time they would talk about her getting aroused, it was like, and I'm wet. That's what she would literally be like, well, I'm wet, so I'm going to sit here wet on the, what did she say? Like on the, and I hate that term too. Like, even me saying it, like, but they just, it was so, he'd be like, and I was growing, and she'd be like, well, I'm wet.
Yeah. Are you wet for me? Yeah. Like, okay.
I am. I'm always turned on.
It's interesting because like I've been doing some ghostwriting. So I've been writing like a little bit of romance myself, and it's something that I wonder about when other authors are writing from like multiple points of view. Like, obviously, I don't know what it's like to be a man. I don't know what the experiences of being male, but I feel like maybe sometimes authors try to put so much into the male characters because of that. Like, oh, I need to overcompensate because this is something that this isn't my experience. Like, I need to make sure this feels believable. And I know I've found myself doing that to the point where then I will have a beta reader or a friend that I send something to read where they'll say, I think you've done a great job with him, but I think she's a little underdeveloped. And I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Like, I thought she would be the one that I just knew and it was easy and good and done. But I feel like maybe I'm not alone in this. Maybe this is something that specifically female authors think about when writing male characters, and so much so that they put so many details into those male experiences that we almost neglect the female experience.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. And I would like to tell you that I would love to be one of your beta readers.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, girl, I will hit you up.
Thank you. My other note, and this is again from the first time that they had sex. Wait, did they had sex? Oh, 3 times. Okay.
Yeah. The first time was when she was coming over for a nap, but they didn't really nap. Wink, wink.
Nudge, nudge. Okay.
Yeah.
So in that moment, so he goes down on her, she orgasms, which by the way, polite. The woman should always orgasm first. Always.
Yeah. Well, in that one, they were actually 69ing too to like start with. And
right,
I was like,
I didn't like that either, to be honest. I was like, hand on the head, hand on the tummy. Like, you can't, it's just not for me. So even when I read it, and I'm glad that there was the point where she was like, I couldn't keep his member in my mouth. Because it's like, yeah, it's a lot of work. They don't call it a job for nothing. Like, it's lot of work.
For sure. And I'm with you. It's too much work for me personally, but I will say I did like the way that it was described in the scene, because she even says, she's like, oh, this is something that like I never really was into. Like, it was always just like a joke, with like boys in high school saying like 69, ha ha ha. But like I did find it sexy, like seeing her experience, like, oh, this is actually, I'm kind of into this. Like, okay.
Right. What my note for that scene was that, so she orgasms and then he just goes right up to kiss her on the mouth. Like, no.
You don't like that?
I don't know. I don't know. I can't. It's hard because I also don't love, when a guy like gets up and he's like, okay, I'm going to go brush my teeth. I'll be right back. It's like,
oh yeah, no.
But I also don't want like that fresh, on my face.
See, I'm really into seeing that and also reading that in books, in media, in life, just because I think we've glamorized what sex is, especially in our media content. And so if you read a book or watch a movie, hardly ever do you see the mess. I mean, hardly ever do you see that. Like, and so I appreciate seeing that because I want people to acknowledge, like, the thing that I feel like is still missing from romance novels is the woman getting up after sex to go pee so she doesn't get a UTI.
Right.
Like that is what I want to read in sex scenes in romance. Like, I want the dirty, messy, awkward parts of sex because I think those are fun.
No, agreed. Those are fun and they're also realistic. What especially when there's the depiction of like specifically a woman's first time, it's never like, by the way, it hurt so badly I couldn't walk for 3 days. It's like,
it was magical.
It stung when he entered, but then there was pleasure. And it's like, okay.
And I orgasmed after 2 seconds.
Yeah.
It's so good. Yeah, that's that's a constant. Yeah, I'm sick of seeing that narrative too.
I mean, what are you going to do? Write your own. That's what you're going to do. You're going to
exactly answer all your questions. Did you have a particularly favorite sex scene or sexcerpt that you wanted to read or share?
Ooh, they were in like the mailroom, I believe. And he pushed her up against the wall. Now, here's my question.
Yes.
She was facing the wall, right? And so it was like almost doggy, but not really.
Yeah, it was like, okay, because I feel like lately I've had to like read a sex scene and then I have to like almost get up and like reenact it myself just to understand like what position people are in. So this was one where I was like, okay, wait. So he pushes her up against the wall and then he spins her around so she's facing the wall, but because she's short and he's tall, she has to like stand on his fucking feet while he does her from behind. I'm just like, okay, thank God she's a dancer and like has flexibility because this would not work for me.
Yeah, you know, but I will say, like, kudos to him for knowing that she's so short and he's so tall and being able to, like, what did they say? He like pretty much like carried her so that like she didn't really have to do a lot of work in that moment.
That's true.
You know?
That's
so,
true.
Like, kudos to him for knowing that had to be done, because I'm sure there's a lot of men out there that wouldn't have done the same thing and it wouldn't have been as hot, or, you know, like, and also I gotta say, she finishes rather quickly. Like, she gets there, and that's not realistic.
It's his giant dick to match his giant body that just does it for her. I feel like I marked a section of like every sex scene that they do have, because I do really think the sex scenes are great. And I will say that's a constant with Tessa Bailey in general. Like, her books are always on the steamier side. There's usually a little more like alpha possessive male happening, especially in the bedroom. So if that is, you know, something that you do like, I think you will like Tessa Bailey's books. So I will read a short little snippet from, this is, I think, the other sex. So we've mentioned the first one, which is the nap that didn't happen. The second one in the male vestibule of her building. And then the third one is, I think they've just entered his apartment and he basically like throws her up against like a table.
Wait, that's actually what I pinned down too. I think it's like page 157 or something, right? Like,
yeah. Well, okay. I mean, if we,
no,
you
go.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to go from, I mean, it's a long scene, but we'll go from here. Oh, it was, she surprised him by showing up in her coat with no clothes underneath. That's how just panties, right? That were like barely. Also, let's talk about how she had those panties though, just lying around. Like, you know what I do appreciate about this book, or maybe appreciate isn't the correct term, but you know, in a book like 50 Shades of Grey, I think her name's Anastasia. She was a virgin and very innocent. And then in this one, it's like, she's not, neither of them are particularly innocent. And she just happens to have these like black see-through panties with her on her one shot at making it as a dancer on Broadway. You know what I mean? Like, exactly. It's not weird that she owns them, but just the fact that like she's in New York for like 2 weeks until her money runs out. But good thing she packed her best panties.
Right. Like, I would never bring my sexy panties on like a 2-week trip where like I was just going to audition. You know, like,
I mean, never say never, but you know. So.
Well, I'm an engaged woman now, so if my fiance is coming, then I'll bring them.
There you go. There you go. Okay, so this is it. She's already like stripped. He's already like thrown her up against the table. So we'll go from here. Leo jerked down his zipper and applied the condom, breaching her with a stuttered groan a moment later and hitting the ground running, ramming the table into the wall with an unrestrained thrust. 2, 3, her ass squeaking on the wood, legs jostling around his hips. Reese tipped her head back and moaned, "Oh my God. It's so goddamn good," he growled into her neck. That's a line I could have done without.
Yeah, and he's like Christ a lot. He'd be like, "Oh, Christ, Reese,
that's right.
You're so fucking beautiful." And he's like, "Come on, don't bring him into this.
You're a New Yorker. Is this a thing? Is this a New York thing? We say Christ, not Jesus? I don't know.
I mean, not that I've experienced, but you know."
"It's so goddamn good," he growled into her neck, pumping into her again, faster, faster, until they were straining. fingernails digging into flesh, the sounds of frantic fucking echoing around the hazy afternoon sun of the apartment. And she loved every wince that crossed his face, every bite of his lip. When he tried not to come, she was blessedly naked. He was fully clothed, save his lowered zipper, and it felt naughty, illicit, while still being exactly perfectly right, because it was her and Leo. I love that. I really do. I love Tessa Bailey's writing, and the scenes are really, really hot. But it's funny how, like, they can be like these super, illicit, sexy scenes and also seem romantic too. Like, I think that's a major accomplishment.
And I think that's real life when you meet someone that you're so, attracted to both physically and emotionally. Like, that's real life when you finally connect physically. It's like hot and sexy and raunchy and can sometimes be awkward, but like that emotional connection is there.
Here's my one Leo line that's later in this scene. And look, I'm here for like the dirty talk. I'm not super into the possessive, like you're mine, mine, mine kind of thing, but you know what? I can let it go. This was the one line
I know what
that just really got me. There's actually a couple, but this one was the one for me. You're my tight little fuck, aren't you, sweetheart?
Oh, that's not what I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to do the one where he goes, do you love how deep I can get it?
We know you can get it deep. You have a massive penis. We know.
Yeah, I didn't, that possessiveness over her sex was not ideal. I mean, I don't mind, like, I like a very strong man, but there's something like weird about that,
Yeah, it's not super for me either. I feel like every once in a while I'll get into a mood where it's like I want something like that, but I can let that one go. It was just him calling her his tight little fuck. I was like, wait, okay, so now we're using the word fuck to describe her. So this is an adjective at this point. Or
no, it's a noun.
It's a noun.
He turned it
she's
into
his
noun.
Little fuck.
Yeah.
So, again, not something I read a lot of. Maybe if I read more of it, it'll become normalized for me.
He also ended that sentence by calling her sweetheart. So
again, yes, your favorite.
I really, really didn't like that. I don't know. There's something about that. It felt really awkward and like it didn't make sense. It's the mix of that romance and like super erotic language too, like the whole you're my little fuck, but then adding in sweetheart. Like I'm just like, ooh, okay. Like what I liked was just sort of I felt like the romance was in the sex scenes by their actions, not their words. Like yes. I don't know if the words were communicating that. But this is a very, nitpicky, petty note on my behalf. So, take it with a grain of salt, because if you like that possessive language, oh boy, you are in for a treat. So, well, at this point, Ashley, I do want to ask, do you want to read a sexcerpt, or do you have any other notes that you want to share before we move on to the grading portion of the podcast? So you read my favorite sexcerpt, but I will say there's one line that I found. It has nothing erotic to do. It has nothing to do with like the book being erotic, but there was a line on page 5 that really stuck with me. And it was, I believe it's a line Reese's mother says to Reese constantly. I mean, not throughout the book, but I think she makes it clear that she has said this to her many times. And it is, if you stumble, make it part of the dance.
Oh.
And I mean, that I feel like I can take that note with me through everything in life. If you stumble, it's kind of like if you fall, get back up. If you fall off the horse, get back on. But this relates more to me. I mean, I wouldn't consider myself I'm going back into ballet next month. I'm excited, but I wouldn't, I just think it's appropriate for me. I really liked that, and it made me feel the feel.
Well, and it's something that you can apply. You don't have to be a dancer to understand that idea. Like for a very short-lived time, when I first moved to LA, I launched a YouTube channel and was making some videos with friends. And I think I still have footage that hasn't been edited and probably never will be. But we called the channel Fail Forward because it felt so appropriate, especially as a group of mid-20-somethings just trying to figure out life as you go, that you're going to fail. Like, you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay, but fail forward. Like, make sure that when you do make these mistakes, you move forward. You don't regress because of the mistake. So I think that's something that we can all apply to our lives. I think it's something more than ever we can apply to our lives, because we live in a society where we are always worried about being wrong or looking bad. And that needs to stop. Like, be open to being corrected. Be open to having people say, you could have said this better, or I don't know if your intentions are in the right place. Like, it's okay for that to happen. You're human. So
it's so hard in it being like any type of performer to get negative feedback. Though you're trained to accept negative feedback, you have to accept
it. Doesn't feel good.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's easy to hear.
Right. And it never will be. I mean, nobody wants to go out and be like, yes, tell me everything bad that I did, or like, tell me all the things that were terrible. Like, but, so long as you're open to it, I think that's half the battle.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
We got real deep with our emotions in this episode. So, I don't know if that's a product of me being on my period, or if it's just like the current state of our world, or what. I'm also very hungry, and so talking about this delicious book does not help. I will say the one thing that I did want to ask you, and then we can wrap things up with a few grades. I really liked the whole concept of what they were doing for Valentine's Day at Leo's Bakery. And so, for anybody who hasn't read it, they come up with this super cute idea that for Valentine's Day, you can order a personalized cake pop for, your loved one, girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever. And he gets this idea from Reese, and I really like when it happens, he asks her, what's your perfect bite? It's the first interaction that they have in the bakery, and he asks her, what's your perfect bite? Like, what makes up the perfect bite for you? Because that's going to be what goes into this cake pop concept. And so I wanted to ask you, Ashley, if that's something you thought about at all, of what your perfect bite is.
You know what? I did when I was reading it. And it's funny because cake pops are so, and I don't want to use the word like personal, but like they're, you get one, maybe two bites out of it. So you got to make it count. So it can't be one of those like, oh, maybe I would like this, or I would like this for this occasion. It's got to be one where like, you will love it always. So having said that, I think my perfect bite, after much consideration, this was a tough one because I immediately wanted to go with like cake batter, or like birthday cake, but for me, it would be red velvet cake with a white chocolate raspberry swirl. That's what it's dipped in, and then covered with very light sanding sugar. So sanding sugar, it's like sugar crystals.
Ooh, okay.
And that's my perfect bite. So it's not like crazy over abrasive. I don't usually like white chocolate. I usually prefer milk chocolate, but I think for red velvet, because there's already cocoa in the red velvet cake. Yeah. That I think for me, that would be a really great mix. So that's, you know what? I give it back to you. What would be your perfect bite?
Gosh, when I thought about this, I was like thinking about like all the different flavors I like and like what pairs well together. And I'm one of those people where I, would be like, it would depend on like, what mood I was in. Like if it was the fall, I might want, I always like going for the seasonal flavors. So assuming it was like Valentine's Day-ish. No, I can't even do that because I'm not like a fan of like raspberry or something like, so I'm not a big berry person in my cakes. So I feel like the best one for me would be something that's more like fall or winter, something a little bit spicy. So maybe like a Mexican mocha or like Mexican hot chocolate cake with chocolate and like some caramel glaze. So something with like a little spicy, a little bitter, but still sweet. And there has to be chocolate.
Yeah. But I'm definitely, it's hard to make a cake pop without chocolate because the coating. I mean, I've done it before. I've used like coconut oil, but I don't like coconut. And I will tell you this, you had me with your cake, with your perfect bite, except for the last, what did you put on top? What did you say was with it?
Oh, I said like some more chocolate and maybe a little bit of like a drizzle of caramel.
That was it. That's what lost me. I am not a caramel girl.
Oh, see, I like it. I like the salted caramel with chocolate. I'm not somebody that's just going to like pop a caramel into my mouth. Like it's not,
no way.
It's not for me. But if there's like a little drizzle as opposed to it being like the entire coating, then I'm okay with it. Like, I don't want it to be the main feature.
I agree with that, but I also I would say if it's an equal ratio between chocolate and caramel, I can vibe with it, but it's not normally my thing. I would never just have, like you, I would never just have a plain caramel and just like go on my merry way. Like, those caramels that they have at like the dentist's office, I would never eat those.
Oh yeah, no. Well, and that's, blasphemy. Why are they giving out caramels at the dentist's office? Like, get out of here.
It's ridiculous. But, they want you to come back.
Yeah, more business. But I'm a chocolate girl, like not so much white chocolate, but milk chocolate and dark chocolate. Like, so if you paired just about anything with those, I would be fine. It could be coconut. It could be hazelnut.
I cannot do coconut. I can't do it.
That's okay. More for me. It could be coffee. It could be orange. Like I love so many things paired with chocolate, and I feel like a lot of things pair with chocolate. Although I will say I was really surprised at myself because I tried chocolate covered bacon and it just seemed like a waste of time.
That does not sound appealing to me. And I know that there's this whole thing of like putting bacon on a donut, and like I've had it and I like it. It's never, I would never go out of my way to get it. It would always have to be like presented to me and then I'll eat it and I'll like it.
Yeah.
But, I'll never have a craving for it. But I got to tell you, chocolate covered bacon sounds ridiculous.
It was just one of those things where, because I really like a salty sweet. So like I really enjoy chocolate covered potato chips. I've had chocolate on popcorn. I've had chocolate pretzel M&Ms are like one of my favorite dessert snacks. But I love bacon and I love chocolate. It just seemed like it would be delicious and it just didn't work for me. So let's go ahead and give the book a few grades. And we are going to be grading on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the very best that it could possibly be. And we are looking at the heart, humor, and heat of the book. So let's start with heart. On a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think, Ashley?
I got to go with a full 10 for the heart.
Ooh.
I think it had more heart than I would say anything else when you add in everything. I mean, there was heart with the romance. There was heart between Reese and her mother. There was even heart between Leo and what was it, Jackie and Tad, his two sales associates. I mean, there was a lot of heart and also just Reese's love of Broadway and of dancing. That had a lot of heart.
And it's Valentine's Day. Like there's the whole Valentine's Day thing of people coming in and buying, a special treat for their loved ones. Like I'm with you. It's very high on the heart rating. The only reason I'm going to give it a 9 and not a 10 is something that we didn't really talk so much about, but it's very inherent in the story and the setup, and that is the constant lying that's happening between Reese and Leo, because she, first approaches him thinking he'll be her key to getting an audition, and then it spirals out of control, as most lies do, with her pretending to be in a show and hiding what she's actually doing and not telling him that she's only there for a couple weeks. So that the whole book, you're right, is so much love, so much heart. But that was the one thing that drove me nuts throughout, because you know from the very beginning that he's going to find out at some point. And
right. And there were so many times where I felt like it would have been okay for her to say, like, look, Leo, I didn't tell you the truth, but here is the truth. Because the whole thing with the show of her lying that she was in Angela's Follies or whatever, is that a real show?
My guess was that it was supposed to be like based off of like Ziegfeld's Follies or something. But...
yeah, I know Chicago's obviously one of the greatest hits of all time. I love Chicago. But, and for those of you listening, she actually in the end gets a chorus line role in Chicago. But I'm not just bringing it up randomly. Like, I know shows, but there were so many points for her to say, like, look, my intention when I first walked in there was to do X, but then I felt Y. Therefore, I lied about Z, but it's not true. I'm not in a show. I am a struggling dancer, but I never asked for your help because I fell in love with you. Yeah. There were so many times for her to come clean, and then and you knew, thing was, I was waiting for them to introduce Leo's father. Like, I was waiting, and I thought that's who was going to be walking on their like first dinner date. That's who I thought was walking in, not the Broadway dancer.
Oh, yeah. The guy that like screwed him over when they were younger. And that's why he's like worried about making connections with people who are in, the world of Broadway, because he assumes they'll be using him. I mean, it's a story that we're all familiar with. And so that's why we also didn't talk about it a lot in the episode, is just like, you can tell from the beginning of the story, like, what this is going to be. Like, she is going to be lying. He is going to not know about it. And then what's interesting is that I think Leo is actually the one who approaches things so much better than she does. Like, he's always the one to take initiative to reach out to her and find her and fix things. And I kept thinking maybe it's because she's 21 and he's 28. Like, I think I've just reached my peak of wanting to read stories about people who are younger than 25. Like, it's not really in my best interest anymore. And that's okay. So, but yeah, I mean, for that very reason, that's why I can't give it the full 10. But I will say, outside of the lie that's kind of threaded throughout this story, there's a lot of heart. And, it's Valentine's Day. That's what I would expect.
Right. Yeah. Agreed. Definitely agreed. So what would you give it?
I gave it a 9. And I feel like if there wasn't so much love and heart happening outside of the romance, it would have been lower. But I feel like the world itself and all the characters within it, like you said, the friendships, even bringing his dad back into the picture at the end when they have their happy little family several years into the future. I think that is all great. And it overshadows the lies that are happening throughout, especially when you remember that they just met. They've only known each other for 2 weeks in this story. So I can forgive some lying when it comes to the beginning of a relationship.
Totally. 100% agree.
All right. How about the humor?
I didn't find the book particularly funny. I think they had some very realistic like laughs between them. Between Leo and Reese. And I did appreciate Jackie and Tad, because I feel like they were kind of the comedic side of this book. Yeah. But I did not find the book funny. So I don't want this to reflect my overall rating, but I gotta say that, like, I want to give it a 4 out of 5 because a 4 out of 10, because though it was very entertaining, I did not think that this book was in any way, shape, or form funny.
That's okay. Well, and we're not saying that every romance has to be a laugh out loud comedy. I mean, we've had plenty of books on this show that we don't even score for the humor factor because it's not applicable. They're period dramas that aren't about the laughs. So this one, I'd probably go a little bit higher just because I felt like they had some good banter. I thought there were some, like her showing up naked to his house and a lot of the interactions that they have with each other. And then, like you said, the two friends that work in the bakery, definitely provide some great comic relief. So I wouldn't go much higher. I'd say a 5, maybe 5.5. But I mean, I was smiling. I wasn't laughing out loud, but it was more of a positive read than it was a comedic read. Which again, perfectly fine. Doesn't have to be hilarious. I'm fine with that. So anyway, well, on to my favorite category, and that's heat. What do you think?
Heat, I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10, I think. I thought it was very hot, but the dirty talk really it really did. It took a point off for me. I want to make it clear, like, I'm not opposed to dirty talk. I like dirty talk. But I think
you don't have to explain yourself. Like, don't worry.
And I think dirty talk is very much within foreplay. I don't mind it in the actual physical act of sex, but like, I think Leo's it was not my thing. Like, if it was his version of dirty talk, I don't get down with.
That's okay. I'm gonna give it a 10 because I thought the amount of sex scenes and the content of the sex scenes, and I don't know if we mentioned this, but like, they are very, very big on consent in these sex scenes. Like, I know he's being all alpha male and talking dirty, but he constantly checks in with her to see if things are okay. Even on that one time when he takes her on the romantic date to the restaurant and he's kind of like, touching her leg, like underneath the table. He asks her, like, is this okay?
Mm-hmm.
Are you all right with this? So I was here for it. Like, there were a few lines that I agree were not my favorite, but I don't think it was enough for me to knock it down a point. I really do think this was like a great balance when it came to the sex scene. So I'm here for it. I'm gonna give her a 10.
All right. Well, I appreciate the honesty.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, everybody has a different read. So it's, we can both agree that the sex scenes were super hot. There was plenty of them in the book, but, the thing that took you out of it was some of the language, and that's perfectly fine.
I was expecting more sex scenes. They only had 3, and I just thought, I think the detail within them was great, and I loved that. Mm-hmm. But I was expecting a little more.
Interesting. See, and knowing that the whole book is about 200 pages, I thought we got an amazing amount of sex scenes for that page count.
I mean, overall, like, with the page count, absolutely. I just, in general, like, I would have liked to have had another one.
You can never go wrong with a little bit more.
Very true. Very, very, very true.
All the more reason to start writing your own is what I'm hearing.
I know. I feel like maybe I should. And I'll tell you right now, I'm going to have more than three sex scenes in it.
Okay, well then I want to be a beta reader for you when you get that book out.
You got it. I'll let you know when this starts.
Oh gosh. Well, Ashley, I think you already mentioned it, but is it safe to say that you are interested in reading more romance after reading The Sweetest Fix?
100%. I am definitely interested in reading more romance.
Yay! Yeah, well, girl, we're going to hook you up because there is plenty more Tessa Bailey. I know I mentioned Rosie Dannon, but there is plenty more romance where that came from. So always a little bit of something for everybody. And for some of us, a lot of something for us too. So
I wanted to refer to his manhood again, but I couldn't think of the right word. What is it, like?
I don't know, a handful?
Girth doesn't apply to this one. But.
It was a heavy length of romance.
Another member of romance.
Yay. Well, thank you again. And I can't wait to see what your next romance read is.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This was so much fun. It really like brightened my day.
Thanks so much for listening. Boobies and Newbies is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts. You can follow Boobies and Newbies on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Boobies Podcast.